be happy where you are, be grateful for what you have. And we have a job, we have security. I think that's when we really started questioning too, is this our grass? Is this the best place for us to be putting all of this time and energy and effort into not a great result?
This is Andrew Petty is Dying, where we tap into the power of our mortality to become the people we were made to be and live the lives we were made to live. I'm your host, Andrew Petty, and I'm dying. I hate to say it, but so are you. I woke this morning to gently falling snow and a landscape gradually being shrouded in white. I read some more of a new book that a good friend of mine just published. Touched down briefly in Ecclesiastes for a quick hit of practical wisdom. Special thanks to Matt Wilkes, my guest on episode 20, for turning me on to Ecclesiastes again. Then led an early morning Zoom session with one of my graveyard group masterminds, a group of men who meet each week before the sun's up to invest intentional time and energy and living the lives they were made to live. They're putting in the time week in and week out to leave it all out on the field of life. So encouraging and inspiring to be with them. Always a great way to start the day. When I emerged from my office at 8:30, I found my wife and 2 boys snuggled on the couch downstairs. Oh man, I thought this is one of those days where the best choice might just be to not do much of anything except enjoy being together, which is actually doing a lot, I think, in the grand scheme of things. But alas, I had a podcast episode to produce. My wife had some work to do, and my 2 boys had their final day of at-home school to knock out before the Thanksgiving holiday. So we enjoyed a few more minutes of coziness, then began to mobilize to get our respective stuff done. I had the half-daunting, half-enjoyable prospect of drafting the script for the solo podcast episode ahead of me, and as my wife and I shuffled around the kitchen, an idea struck me. Hey, I blurted out, what if we did this episode together as a conversation? Her eyes told me before she responded verbally that the idea both surprised and interested her. And I could tell as I said it that I was excited about it too. It meant a diversion from my usual way of creating a solo episode, and a chance to unpack with her a lesson we've learned together over the past 8 years of major life renovation. Plus, as I often say, once you meet my wife, there's a really good chance you're going to like me even more. You might also wonder, how did he trick her into becoming his wife? I get it, and I don't have any idea either. I'm just glad she was up for it. Charis Petty is one heck of a woman. She's fiercely loyal to those she loves. She's outrageously thoughtful and generous. She's a creative and passionate gift giver who genuinely enjoys making the lives of those around her better and brighter. She's an attentive, fun, and courageous mother of our 2 boys. She's a gifted real estate professional, and she's got a rocket engine for a brain. She's really wise. In fact, she's my favorite coach. She hits me between the eyes regularly with exactly what I need. I've learned to defer to her far superior engineering abilities, and her situational awareness is astounding to me, who, admittedly, lacks it almost entirely sometimes. And thank goodness this woman is my wife, my lifelong partner in crime, the woman with whom I've created a family and embarked on a journey of becoming the people we were made to be and living the lives we were made to live. Oh, and did I mention? In addition to everything I've already said about her, she's smoking hot. Lucky, lucky me. All right, coming to you live from Studio A of the Andrew Petty is Dying podcast, which is the bedroom in our house with my lovely bride, Charis. Sounds like Paris for any of you who have seen her name in print at the podcast website or something and didn't know how to pronounce it. It's Charis with a K sound rather than a CH sound. What other names have you gone by in the past from mispronunciations?
The most common would be Charis or Charis. Charis was the one that I actually liked. Charis, yeah, you name it.
Which is still astonishing to me because I'm an English major. I like languages, and from day one, when I saw your name, I just assumed it was Charis. So I don't know what's going on.
I would definitely say my own name wrong.
All right. Well, a lot of other people do. So I guess I'm in the minority, which I don't understand, but that's a different topic for a different time. Here with my wife, Charis. As I said in the intro to this whole deal, we kind of brainstormed this version of this episode just this morning, and we're just going to have fun with it because I think our story shared in this way with each other will be a better way of illustrating the idea that I want to talk about today. This common saying, the grass is always greener on the other side, while we kind of understand what that means and it has some value, there's also some ways in which it is really not helpful and probably keeps some of us from finding greener grass that really is available to us and is a better place for us to settle down and live and become the people we were made to be. So that's the idea we want to tease out today. And I just went on Urban Dictionary real quick to see what sort of the prevailing definition is. Not that Urban Dictionary is like the end all be all for this stuff, but they are one source for getting this information. And since it's a sort of a colloquialism or whatever, a saying in our culture, I thought I'd see what they had to say. And Urban Dictionary definition of the grass is always greener on the other side is that it refers to the way we tend to look at other people's lives and other things that we don't have in general through rose-colored glasses. It comes from the idea of looking at a neighbor's lawn and seeing it as better looking, healthier, and overall greener than your own, when in reality you're just ignoring anything negative about it and downplaying everything positive about your own. So when I read that, I thought, yeah, that's a pretty decent definition of kind of how that grass is always greener on the other side idea is used in our culture. When have you run across that?
I've heard that all my life, for sure.
What kind of connotation does it have? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it neutral? Is it like...
I would think it's basically telling me just be happy with what you've got and where you're at and stop comparing to everybody else.
Yeah, and I think there's some real nuggets of truth in there, like be grateful for what you have. I mean, that makes a lot of sense because when we're not willing to be grateful for what we have, then we set ourselves up for chronic unhappiness. Mm-hmm. What was the second part you said? Happy with what we have.
Don't compare
don't
to
compare.
what everybody else has.
That's super easy to do, especially in the age of social media when everybody, shares their most magical moments and the best version of their lives and
all their green grass.
All their green grass. Yeah. Yeah. That's like the 21st century version of a fence, isn't it? Mm-hmm. You're looking over your neighbor's fence on social media and gosh, they took a better vacation than we did. And clearly his job is better and his kids are better behaved and yada, yada. Here's what I think we often also mean when we use that phrase. Embedded in that is this idea that if I could just get to greener grass, then I would be able to relax and rest and life would be easy. At least I know that was part of how I thought of greener grass in the days when I really longed for something very different than what we experience today. What we've discovered and what I want to do now is kind of unpack our story from one kind of lawn to another that today we would call greener. What we've discovered is that in fact, you can actually find greener grass. And that once you get there, it takes a heck of a lot of work to keep the lawn healthy and green. And so my expectation that if we would just find greener grass somewhere else, then we'd be able to relax and life would be easy has been completely blown out of the water. But still, I not for one nanosecond have regretted making the changes that we've made and finding the greener grass, even though it is incredibly difficult work to keep it green. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think in that journey too, we didn't at all compromise though being grateful for where we were and what we did have, that those things were good, but maybe just not the best for us. So it wasn't like, we're so unhappy, this is ridiculous, we hate everything and we'll go find something better. It was more of that journey of, maybe there's something even better that will enrich our lives even more.
Yeah, that's a great point because the friends and family and everyone that we left back east, in our case, to move out west, many, if not most of them, are very happily planted in those fields. The grass is green for them. So it wasn't a matter of, is the grass green or not? It was a matter of, does our grass grow well here? And just to create some context, it was 6.5 years ago that we finally uprooted from where we were back east in southeastern Virginia in a little community called Williamsburg, the historic Triangle, where I had lived for 20 plus years post-college. And I talk a lot about that chapter in my life and some of the critical episodes and other episodes of my podcast, especially I think the first and third episodes. And Charis joined me in 2005 when we got married. She heroically uprooted herself from a comfortable situation near her family and a job that she loved and joined me where I was with my job in Williamsburg. Just out of curiosity, like what was your, I don't know if you'll appreciate me asking this question or not, but what was your perspective on the grass you were being invited to join in Williamsburg when you came?
It was really unknown, which, in and itself can be scary and exciting all at the same time. I had never once thought about living on the East Coast or in that type of an environment. So I don't think I knew what to expect, but I was so madly in love with you. I didn't care where I was.
Nice.
It actually really is true. I mean, I really wanted to just be where you were in your world and create our world together. So it's probably good that it was in a totally new environment and I didn't have any of my crutches to lean on.
Which is really interesting because green grass and greener grass can take all different shapes and forms. Like greener grass for you in part was, hitching your wagon to me, even though it wasn't geographically a place you'd ever desired to be.
Right.
Being with me there was a form of greener grass for you.
For sure.
So when we talk about greener grass in this context, we're not just meaning geographically. In our case, the greener grass that we've pursued and found at this stage in our life did involve a geographic change, but it doesn't need to be that. Mm-hmm. In your case, it involved both, but only the relational side with me was the greener part.
Right. Geographically was not.
Wasn't all that appealing.
I left Colorado.
I was in a long-term period of angst about who I was and what I did in the world. And really a lot of what was happening for me was not an external battle as much as an internal one around understanding the kind of human I was and beginning to be willing to give myself permission to pursue what I believed was best for me and my family and to pursue what I wanted simply because it was what I wanted. And that wasn't, for a variety of reasons, something that I had developed the capacity to do. And so I had been in one particular work environment for 14 years and you joined me in 2005. So you joined me 5 years into my professional tenure there. How quickly would you say after we got married and you moved back with me, you began to see that for me professionally in some other ways, the grass wasn't the greenest it could be?
Honestly?
Yeah.
Right away.
Right away. Mm-hmm. What were some of the indicators like? And not talking about the context I was working in, but mostly like what were the symptoms in me?
No, I think I could tell that you weren't fully settled in what you were trying to do or who you were trying to be, and the environment you were in just didn't seem to be encouraging or improving any of that. It was definitely more of a strain to find satisfaction and fulfillment vocationally, rather than it just lending itself to being fulfilling and bringing joy. We found plenty of joy and happiness within our lives, but it just felt like it took more work maybe than it needed to be. And I think within a short period of time, I saw you maybe changing to some extent too, losing a little bit of the carefree Andrew that I knew and married, and you were still funny, but maybe not as quick to be as funny and witty, just a little bit more wrapped up internally.
Well, I don't think I've ever asked you to actually just describe what that was like. That was really helpful. And to be fair, I mean, in the professional environment I was in, which was in a faith-based nonprofit, ostensibly doing good things for good people, I felt it was a calling for me, not just of a human sort, but of a divine sort. And so it was confusing to me that in that environment, I still was not finding fulfillment and satisfaction in my work to an adequate amount, because I don't think that any professional setting gives you 100% joy all the time. That's just part of the human condition. But, Charis was observing that I was less of who I was in that environment. And I don't think it was for lack of trying. I mean,
no,
would you agree?
No, not at all. I think that was it. I think I saw that you were working hard and doing all that you could, and it just became more of a strain rather than life-giving. And I just really wanted something that just gave you life and gave you that spark that you wanted to work hard because it was something you loved doing, not because you were working really hard to try to be good and do good.
There's at least two big components, I think, in what was causing that grass that I'd planted in myself and professionally to not be as green as it could. One of them was the context itself. It was a challenging environment, and there were a lot of internal challenges going on there within the organization that aren't unusual for organizations, but were not healthy either for the members of the organization. And one of the things I learned while I was there, and in some ways was subject to forms of abuse, verbal and otherwise, on a long-term basis was that, in hindsight, some of the biggest lessons I learned there was that, if I'm being abused in any form or used in any form that's detrimental to me, it's because I'm usable, I'm abusable. There were some challenges in the environment itself, but I was susceptible to some of those challenges because of deficiencies in me. And I look back on that time and realize that it really was a crucible that allowed me to see those things in myself. And I'm very grateful for it for that reason. Grateful for it for a lot of other reasons too. But one of the things that it did was just shone a mirror, put a mirror in front of me that showed me some areas of myself that really needed growth. And I had very little self-awareness in some important ways at that time, especially just, like I said before, having the ability to know and affirm what I wanted and to be okay pursuing it because that's what I wanted. I didn't feel okay about that. I needed all kind of external validation and permission to move forward. Eventually broke free of that, but those were two of the things going on. There was an organizational element, challenges within it, and then challenges within me in that organization that were causing problems too. But we were also beginning to, I think, tire of our geographic grass too. Like, what were the elements for you that were challenging, just specific to you?
Well, number one would be humidity. True geographical situation.
Swampy southeastern Virginia.
So hot, so humid. Those summers were rough for me. I just don't like that kind of climate. And remember, in the midst of all of this, we're also having children. So we have two little ones. I was a stay-at-home mom, so trying to entertain them during the summer was really challenging. I think, too, it was a little bit harder for us to find peers that we connected really well with. We were slightly older parents compared to most people in that community because we started just a little bit later. So most people in our age group had kids a lot older than ours, so it was harder to connect in some of those ways. There just was something, too, about it that just didn't maybe fit my personality or my wiring. I've never been able to put my finger on 100% because it was a good community. There was good people. It's not like there was nothing to do or anything like that, but it just never quite clicked, or maybe we never quite settled.
Yeah, and I felt the same, and I couldn't always put my finger on it exactly because at face value, there were many things that were great about it. We did have good friends, and we had tons of sets of surrogate grandparents for our boys and aunts and uncles.
That was amazing. Yeah.
We had in many ways, a wonderful community, and yet it was just something that didn't quite fit for us. And for me, it just felt like more increasingly we were like a fish out of water. Like in that cultural setting, we just didn't quite fit. I mean, there were a lot of different little indicators. We got on health kicks of a sort that other people kind of look at us and go, what is going on? And they'd tell me to eat more casserole because I was getting too thin, and I wasn't getting too thin. I was getting healthy. Just little things along the way. So eventually you saw it right away, but it took me, another 9 years to get to the point where I was willing to affirm that there was potentially greener grass for us elsewhere, and to be willing to make a break with the field we were planted in and do something different. There were other adages in my mind at that time that were shared with me by people that I respected and loved, things like, bloom where you're planted, all of which in one application I think have a lot of value. Because sometimes we're always pushing for something else when in fact the very things that we want are right in front of us. I don't think those adages were true for us in that moment. I think they're pretty true for us now, but to have used them for us then would have been misuse. Like, it wasn't good for us to continue to try and bloom where we've been planting. We were talking right before we started recording that I think we really, really tried to bloom where we were planted. And we really, really tried to, we tilled the soil, put in fertilizer, aerated, put down seed, watered it over and over and over again, and kept not getting the quality of grass, so to speak, in our lives that we really were looking for. Like, it just didn't produce for us. Where for other people, less effort in that same soil produced grass that was great for them.
They were mowing 4 times a week.
Yeah, exactly. What were you going to say? Because I was saying, and then you were getting ready to say something.
Well, I don't know if it's going out of order for you, but I think a real indicator for us too was whenever we would come visit my family in Colorado, even just granted, you're on vacation and this and that, but something inside of us really did come alive, and neither of us ever wanted to leave. And we would get back to our home grass and just be sad.
Yeah.
And not want to work on that grass anymore, because it was like, oh, why are we doing this here? But then why are we unhappy? Be happy where you are, be grateful for what you have. And we have a job, we have security. I think that's when we really started questioning too, is this our grass? Is this the best place for us to be putting all of this time and energy and effort into not a great result?
And we did eventually come to the point, rather I should say, I eventually came to the point, because in all truth, you probably 2 or 3 years before me knew it was okay and were ready to make a change. It was okay to make a change, and you were ready to make a change.
Yes. And not without, I was extremely nervous about that. I like my comfort. I like security. And the thought of a big change was terrifying. But I did look at our life and just feel like, without that, what life are we leading ourselves into? And the biggest question was, if 5 years from now nothing has changed, is that okay? And I just thought, nope, not okay.
And in hindsight, this is a huge lesson for me. I've married a wonderful woman with a ton of insight and wisdom. And for probably 3 years leading up to when we actually left, I would often tell her, she would say, but you just don't seem happy and this, that, and the other. I'd say, no, you just don't understand X or Y, or no, I just need to keep doing this or that. And, maybe things will turn around soon. In hindsight, I see she was just seeing very clearly much earlier than me things that were true about me and my professional environment, us and that geographic and cultural environment. She just saw them more clearly, more quickly, and was calling them out. And I wasn't able or willing to see it at the time. And so one of the lessons from that time of life for me is that when my wife begins to call attention to something, whether or not I see it, my new instinct is now to listen. What is she seeing that I'm not seeing? And to be willing to start taking action on it, even if I don't get it yet. So for all of you spouses and partners out there, if you're with someone that you love and trust, and hopefully you are, because if you're not, that's another problem. But if you're with someone that you love and trust, be willing to heed their insight and their advice earlier, even before you see it. Start following that smoke back to the fire to see what's going on. And so we did eventually kind of gain, what do they call it? Rocket science. There's a speed at which you're able to break free of the gravity of Earth and achieve orbit and the weightlessness of space. And we did finally get there. There was a lot to that story. We engaged a coach with the support of his wife over a 2-year period to help me professionally, and then to help us make a transition, and eventually left that grassy field, and came out to Colorado, where, like you said before, our hearts had been for a long time, but our bodies hadn't. And so for us, it was getting our hearts where our bodies had been our bodies where our hearts had been for a long time already. And so we got here, and man, the grass was green, and it's just been green the whole time, right?
Mm-hmm. Supernaturally, no work, no stress. It's great.
So what is it? Because you and I would both say today, emphatically, this is greener grass for us.
Yes.
And so we would affirm for all of you out there who wonder if there is greener grass. Our story is descriptive of our experience, not prescriptive of anything that any of you should do just because of our story. But for some of you, you're listening to this and going, this is kind of reminding me of how I'm feeling in my current situation, whether it's professional or relational, or geographic, or some combination of all of the above. We got here. It is greener. And what is it like in this greener grass?
I mean, let me tell you, though, I don't think we do any less work trying to produce that greener or to cultivate that grass. In fact, might say we work harder, because there's a lot of things different here too. Our cost of living is much higher, and it's a smaller community, and there's definitely a lot of challenges that has brought with it. But for us, that intense work produces such joy and fulfillment and that spark. And you professionally have found something that I see actually brings you alive. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't plenty of really stressful times, or even maybe insecure times, or financial strain. But still in that, I see the Andrew that I married, that I knew was there, that was always in there, but somehow was not being brought to the surface. So it's like a huge weight is lifted. And when you have those kind of results, putting the work into the tilling and the fertilizing and the watering, yeah, sometimes it's exhausting, but you still have this motivation to do that, to keep doing it, because it keeps producing more and more lush grass that you go, oh, this is where I wanted to put my roots down. This is what this work is worth, is bringing us to this point of, yep, this is where we want to be.
I second all of that. And I would say that I have never worked harder in my life on every frontier of our lives than I have since we moved here. And like Charis said, some of the big differences are that work has over time gradually produced a harvest in our lives that we enjoy and appreciate and want. Whereas in the former chapter, we did all of that work and more to try to get that ground to produce the kind of grass that we wanted to live in. It didn't. It just never did for us. Again, there are other people in that same environment who are putting in even less work than we did and getting a satisfactory result. So it's not about the environment as much as it wasn't our environment to thrive in. And we're still susceptible to all of the external things that we can't control. We're in the midst of a quote pandemic still, which, creates some challenges. I've been figuring out, how to get clients as a coach and how to this and how to that. And you've been figuring yourself out professionally, and a lot of other challenges come along. But again, the work that we put into those things continues to yield things. And I would say, like in your case, it's been an example of, you put in some energy professionally here in the way that you had back there, but the fruit it's produced in your life has been exponentially more than it ever did back where we lived before, because you came in to Steamboat practicing your administrative assistant trade well, and now you find yourself a fully fledged real estate professional, something that you never dreamed you would be or imagined you would be, and you love it.
And I get to do it with my mom too.
Yeah, with your mom.
Extra dream come true.
So it's sort of like when you pursue greener grass that is genuinely there for you to pursue, green grass grows green grass.
Yeah, I think when you're in that environment where that weight is lifted and you have a little more freedom and excitement to figure out, well, what else is there? How else can this, continue to improve? And I feel like it opens your eyes to more opportunities that then you're also a little braver to try, because that change for us was terrifying. That was a huge, huge change in our lives that, we have a great support system and we knew we'd never truly crash and burn, but we really could have uprooted, come to Colorado and just totally bombed. What if professionally, you hadn't figured out, hadn't had connections, I didn't have my connections, whatever. But I think taking that extremely brave step and making that huge change, I feel like inside kind of made us go, well, what else can we do? We did that and we're still doing it. So yeah, then you start looking into your life going, well, maybe I'll try this because that could work. I think failure is a little bit less scary too, because we've had plenty of challenges along the way of getting settled here and realizing, well, you can overcome that too. And just gives you great confidence when you really practice being brave, I think.
And there was a defining moment for me when I realized I had to practice being brave, because it's what we told our boys to do all the time. And I talk about that, I think, in episode 3 or so, becoming the boss of your fear. When I realized the only thing holding me back from making the changes that we wanted to make was simply choosing courage. And so I did in that moment, and resolve came in right alongside all of the fear and the uncertainty that still remained. And I had the fuel that I needed now to move forward. You had it already for some time. And I love everything you said there, because just talking about how that initial choice in favor of courage gave us what we needed to get here and gave us the fuel to continue to figure out a way here and to be more failure tolerant and to become even braver as we went along. And one of the metaphors that's worked for me is this idea of stepping out on a branch further and further and wondering if it's going to hold. And one of the things I've discovered, I think you'd agree with this, is just each step we take out on that limb seems even more dangerous than the first, but we keep discovering every step we take out that the branch is still strong and still holding us. And some of that, because of where we come from a faith perspective, I attribute to that's because that's how God's made it. You know, he catches us. Doesn't mean we get to be fools and expect he's going to catch us, but I don't think we are being fools. I think what we've learned is that in the past, it's sort of like we were, or at least I was sort of like Oliver Twist in the food line at the orphanage. You know, please, sir, can I have just a bit more? Like, world, can you please just give me a little bit? Instead, we said, what if we just changed it and said, let's go get what we think we want and we need from the world? And we've discovered that, oh, lo and behold, it's available.
I think when you love where you are and what you're doing too, I just have so much more motivation to fight for it too. Like, we want to be here. And so, you know, in a professional situation, maybe where we're like, finances are a little tight. And it's like, we're not like, well, guess we better pick up and go somewhere where it's a little easier to live. Because no, this is where we want to be. So instead, it's like, all right, let's figure it out, you know, and let's fight for this because this is worth fighting for. I don't feel like we had that before.
Which brings to mind another adage that's pulled out quite a bit, and that's wherever you go, there you are. So often it's like, you know, someone's considering a move and a trusted friend will counsel them and say, hey, remember, wherever you go, there you are. Like, hey, don't go there to escape yourself. Okay, I buy that. Like, I don't think there are such things as geographic fixes or professional fixes for everything that ails you. I do, however, think there are geographic improvements and professional improvements. It's certainly true that when we came to Colorado, the same Andrew that had lived back in southeastern Virginia arrived in Colorado. I was fundamentally no different and had to learn how to farm in this soil. And the process of farming in this soil has been the primary shaping influence that's allowed me to grow as a person. I think I had continued to farm in that old soil and it was beating me down as a person because it wasn't soil that was ever going to produce the kind of crop that God intended for me to produce in this world. Now I put in time and energy and I grow in response to the toil. Does that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense to me. I never quite said it that way, but I feel probably even more like the Andrew that God intended to be in this world than you've ever known before.
Yes.
You know, but then, you know, when you met me, I wasn't this version and you weren't this version when I met you. Right. 'Cause we're in soil that is nourishing us in ways that we weren't nourished before. And again, it's not a comment on the context we were in, the soil we were in, as much as it is that soil just wasn't formulated for our success. We could have gotten out heavy excavating equipment and all kinds of scientific instruments to try and make the soil better. It wasn't working for us. So eventually we realized that we got here. Guess what? The grass really is greener. And I can tell you, we've said this often, and we say it often to each other, is just that literally not for 1 nanosecond, as frightening, as challenging, as difficult as periods of this transition have been. And we've had some of our scariest moments as a family here. You know, our son had a seizure that we didn't know he'd recover from. We've had all kinds of scary things happen to us here, but still not for 1 nanosecond have we looked back with regret and said, what the heck did we do? We should never have left that field. Why is that? Like, how can it be this hard and be this good? Why have we never regretted it?
I think what you just said is we found what suits us and what lends to how we're designed and wired. And maybe some of it too was just making that brave choice. Maybe that broke us out of something that we were in too, that just put us on a path to becoming more of who we are.
That's a great point. Maybe if we hadn't chosen Colorado and had chosen Sarasota, Florida, we could have had
It's really humid
Oh,
there.
right. It's humid there. Sorry. Never mind. How about Southern California?
Okay.
So,
yep.
It's a great point. It's likely that there may have been other fields we could have planted ourselves with equal satisfaction because we were making a choice in favor of what we believed we wanted and was better for our family. Mm-hmm. Maybe those are the key ingredients, not the location or the profession merely, as important as those things are. Because you can go choose a different location, a different profession, but if it's not lining up a little more closely with what you believe you want and what you believe you were made for, then it's just going to be another lap around the block of frustration and lack of fulfillment and satisfaction.
Can I take us in a totally different direction really quick?
No, this is my episode.
Okay.
Okay, fine.
I would challenge people. I've just been sitting here thinking, if people are thinking about relationships, I don't want you to automatically think, oh, the grass is greener somewhere else, so I'm out. I think another lesson in this is you've got to put in the work to find out if you can cultivate the grass where you are. And green grass, no matter where you are, takes work and effort and energy, blood, sweat, tears. So there's something in there too about fight for what you do have, because I think, like you were saying, we found versions of ourselves that we didn't even know were there and have improved our relationship in leaps and bounds. I mean, I think we know each other more deeply, more intimately, understand each other in different ways, and continue to also make the choice of courage to fight for what we have and keep putting in that hard work too.
That's huge because, when you were getting frustrated with me back east and realizing that, gosh, if this doesn't change in 5 years, then I'm not sure this thing works. Each of us, especially you, could have at some point just pieced out and said, you know what, this relationship with grass ain't working for me. Thankfully, each of us made a different choice and together came up with a different plan, and together have begun to cultivate grass elsewhere. I live in Colorado, so I'm not talking about pot. I'm talking about, the metaphor grass here. And I agree with you that what we've discovered, where back east there was a lot of relational challenge, what we've discovered is we fought for our relationship. We fought for the life of our family and have a depth and a maturity and appreciation and a love in our relationship that we wouldn't have had otherwise.
It's not, you can't use it as a cop-out.
Yeah, right.
Oh, well, Petty said that the grass is greener and I can go over there.
Well, yeah, it's especially important in human relationships because it's always just a different version of the same thing.
Yes,
I mean, there's some things in the human condition that are just sort of similar, like we get bored, we get tired of each other, hard times come, it's hard to keep the spark alive, yada, 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 same old story, different people. And of course, we have a perspective that says the person you commit to is the person you stay with, assuming certain things are in place like fidelity and there's no violence, those kinds of things. So yeah, in the relational area, that's a great catch because that is a case, I think, where bloom where you're planted, and the more work you put in, it'll typically yield good results for you.
And I think the really hard work you put in sometimes will kind of help also open eyes to, oh, I need to make a big change, or maybe your significant other kind of realizes that, but you have to be willing to put that work in individually and together. And even if it's not in an intimate relationship, maybe it is even with a parent or a sibling or someone else, it takes work. But it takes work on both sides too.
So again, our story is just illustrative. It's descriptive. It's not prescriptive. This isn't meant to be an exhortation to anyone out there to make some big changes right away. But if you're listening and this is speaking to you, then you know that potentially this story is for you. And our adaptation of this old adage that the grass is always greener on the other side was meant for you, because in its proper usage, it's encouraging us not to compare with other people and to think that their lives are better because it looks like it on the outside. Get it? Got it? Like, that makes a ton of sense. And comparison is the thief of joy. Don't spend time comparing. However, if our experience is any indicator, and I think it is because we're two people living out our lives, and I think there's a lesson here for many of us, then sometimes there actually are ways in which grass is greener somewhere else, professionally, personally, whatever it might be. And it's okay to give yourself permission to go and do some reconnaissance on that grass and figure it out. In our case, our reconnaissance was like 9 years of constant visits out here and visiting family and realizing that we left a little more of our heart here every time we went back. And finally, we're like, we got to see the handwriting on the wall here. There's something about that place. I don't know what, but there's something about that place and about those people and about that way of living and being that calls to us. And it doesn't call to everybody. There are plenty of people back east who are like, you have a 7-month winter? No, thanks. And I go, 7-month winter, awesome. So this is the greener grass for us personally, professionally, in so many other ways. So don't let that adage or any others like bloom where you're planted get in the way of you pursuing what you believe might be greener grass for you and having the courage to go check it out. And if it looks viable, to make it happen. Because again, if our story is any indicator, then it could be that an even better, fuller version of the human you were made to be and the life you were made to live awaits in that greener grass. And be prepared to work your butt off to keep it healthy and green and thriving for you. And along the way, as you do that work, to find yourself changed in the process and more of who you are emerging along the way. So sometimes the grass really is greener. Let's land the plane there. Any other thoughts that you have, honey, on this topic before we close it?
I think remembering too that sometimes you need to learn how to care for grass. I think a lot of times we also don't know exactly how to do it or what to do. And that's where, your coach and his wife and our parents and those around us helped us talk through stuff, think through stuff. So just like you got to care for grass, I wouldn't know where to start. So learn your lessons and seek the advice and counsel from those that you can trust.
Right. It doesn't have to be a unilateral move all on your own, done solo. We wouldn't recommend that either. Get counsel and advice from people around you. And then having received it, make your own damn decision and go with what you believe is best. Chances are you won't regret it. If you do regret it, guess what? There's a lesson to be learned there. So very rarely is there any drawback from forward movement in life. My endurance coach, one time when I was kind of whining to him in the notes on the app that we share data on, I said, yeah, it was a tough day. I was kind of down, physically feeling blah, blah, blah. And he just wrote back, relentless forward movement, period. And I went, oh, yeah, that's good. So no matter where you are, what you're experiencing, I would encourage forward movement because there's always an opportunity to learn. If you're stuck, don't stay where you are, get moving. Maybe there's greener grass awaiting you. And during, we're recording this during the COVID deal, and at face value, there's another flare up and everybody's scared and there's more lockdowns happening. And for many of you, this is forcing you in ways you hadn't planned to question your current field. And I don't mean just professional field, but the field where you're trying to grow grass. And it's causing you to realize that, gosh, I've been spending a lot of time and energy in a field that isn't producing the kind of grass of the quality that I want. So if that is you and this pandemic is leading you to ask some of those questions, then I would encourage you to dig deep on that, dig into that, figure out what's going on, seize this moment that's been forced upon all of us, and consider where the greener grass might be and what step you could take today to begin moving toward it. Because you are going to die, but you're not dead yet. And it might be sooner than any of us would hope. So time really is our most precious, non-renewable commodity. And time's a wasting. So get after it. Thanks, wifey.
Thank you.
All right.
Love you.
Love you. If this episode spoke to you, if something in you is stirring because you know deep down that there is greener grass for you, then seize this moment. Do something today, even just one thing, that will get you moving in the direction of that greener grass. It's not just for your benefit, by the way, as important as that is. When you move courageously toward your greener grass, you begin a transformation from one version of you to an even fuller expression of the person you were made to be. And that's good for everyone. My purpose as a coach is to help you live the life you know you were made to live. I can help you find your greener grass. Connect with me on Facebook at Andrew Petty Coach or email me at andrew@digdeepwinbig.com. To learn about Graveyard Group Masterminds, where we take time each week to invest in your life's most important work, visit digdeepwinbig.com/The Graveyard Group. I'm so glad you tuned in today. Don't forget to subscribe. And I'll see you next time on Andrew Petty is Dying.